All right, everybody, welcome back to the No Names Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Ways. This is episode 6, and today I'm here with creative entrepreneur Chris Pieta, and we are going to get into his creative business, his coaching program, social media, and a whole lot. So let's jump into it. Okay, so the big thing is like I always start with what are we drinking today? Today we're a little obscure. So what do you got? And I'll say what I have.
I got my trusty Costco cold brew. Can't go wrong with that.
Hey, everyone's on that Kirkland brand, the signature. I actually don't have a Costco card, so that's something I need to pick up.
Oh man, I'm doing all off Instacart now, so
Oh,
you can do
nice.
it without a card.
Damn, that's a little loophole in the system. I like that one. Okay, so we'll try and not have Costco come for you on that one. I got the new Ghost Phase Up. This just got announced, and it's probably one of my favorite flavors. It did crack the top 3, so we're gonna send you home with one of those just so you can, enjoy that before the people, right?
Yeah, I'm pumped to try that one.
So I guess the big thing that I really kind of want to get into first is how we met, which was a pretty funny story because you actually were one of the first people that really helped me get into the freelancing side of things. So I think this was what, 2021 or no, 2020.
It was 2020, I think, right before the pandemic. I think like around then.
Yeah, because I was basically what my backstory on that was I was trying to pitch local businesses on creative like assets and stuff like that. And this I lived a block away from Doppio, so I walk into Doppio Coffee and I see all these cool pictures around. I'm like, I keep noticing this guy's name on here, and I'm like, damn, he got to him before I could. And then I look you up and reach out, and we hopped on a call like that next week, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Dude, that was like huge for me early on. Because I think I really liked all your work there. And I was like, how do you, get into this? Right.
hmm
And I guess that kind of leads us into like, what is your story? Because I'm sure what you told me is going to be what you tell the people. And so, yeah, let's go from, where you started. And then if there was a creative spark kind of like along the time or when you were a kid. Some people it happens really early and like this is what I want to do, or some people it happens like a lot later. So
Yeah.
like let's just hear the story.
Yeah, man. Let's start like right. I guess during my childhood, I wasn't like a super creative kid. Like I never was into like art or photography or anything like that. I did love like Legos though, so that was where I was building. Love Legos. And I always thought I was going to be like an engineer, architect, something more of like the math and science field rather than anything creative. That's how I was like almost like taught all my life. Like go to school, get a solid job, and like as a like STEM degree or something like that. So followed the traditional path, whatever, get good grades during school. Went to college, graduated in chemistry, and from there I just went straight to like corporate America, working a 9 to 5, the usual path because that's pretty much what I was
That's
told
what
to
the
do.
parents tell you to do,
Yeah,
man.
like I didn't have any people that were like doing their own thing or like entrepreneurs in my life, any business owners. So I didn't really know there was like another path that I could go down. Um, so this is like 2016, 2017 right now, and working that 9 to 5. And each way to work, I have like an hour long commute. So during that commute, I'm starting to like listen to different podcasts, different audiobooks, and I really started to listen to a lot of like Tim Ferriss and Gary Vee. Those guys
Oh
were
yeah,
pretty
he's
big
like
back
the
then.
4 hour work week guy, right?
Yeah,
Tim
yeah,
Ferriss.
yeah. So read that book. Um, Listened to like all of his like podcasts, Gary Vee stuff. Also was getting into like Casey Neistat at the time. That's when
Oh
he was
yeah,
doing his
the
like,
OG.
yeah, all those vlogs. So I had like these entrepreneurs, like people that were doing their own thing, and I started getting this idea that like, okay, maybe I can do something for myself. I don't have to follow like this traditional path because now I see like others doing the same, doing like this cool thing, and I can see myself in them kind of. So from there, didn't think much of it because didn't think I had it in me honestly, and I was picking up photography at the time because I went to Japan for like this 2 week long trip.
Oh hell
Picked up
yeah.
like a camera because I knew okay, don't want to take my phone with me. I'll just get a nice camera for that trip. Um, Long story short, fell in love with photography during that trip. I would then go out to shoot sunrises and sunsets in Chicago, do like cityscape photography, do like street photography, and did that for about like 2 years. Got pretty good at it. That's those are like the prints that you saw in Doppio,
Yeah.
all like the Chicago lakefront on like a on a sunset and stuff like that. So from there, I was like, okay, I've been listening to all these like entrepreneur guys. They're even doing their own thing. They have businesses. My photography is kind of picking up. Like people are telling me that it's good, but I'm not like earning any money from it. So how do I like kind of combine these two things? At that point, I knew I didn't want to be working for like the man, working a corporate job, and photography seemed like the way out. So for me, it wasn't really I wanted to be a professional photographer. I just wanted to be like working for myself. And photography just happened to be the thing that I was good at and I thought would help me along that like journey. So now we went from like 2016 to 2019 now. It's 2019. I tell myself this is the year I'm going to like try and figure out this thing, how to make like money off of photography. So one, I didn't believe in myself that I could actually start a business. So I gave myself a challenge of doing an Ironman triathlon in order to like kind of prove to myself that I have what it takes to start a business. Because I was still like working on myself, like developing confidence, building good habits, and the Ironman seemed like this crazy goal that if I could accomplish that, a business would be easy compared to that. So all of 2019, I pretty much spent training for that race. For context, it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and a 26.2 mile run, all back to back.
Brutal.
So I picked like the hardest thing you can do just so I can like prove to myself that if I could do this, I can start a business. That was kind of my thinking. So fast forward like 9 months, September hits, I do the race, complete it. I'm like, okay, time to start a business. So from there, I started researching how do photographers make money. Some people do prints, some people like work for brands, all this stuff. And after a while, I came upon like product photography, where um, product photography made sense to me because if I could work with brands and make them money, then they should be able to pay me, right? If my photos are directly making them income from like ads or whatever, then it makes sense why they would like hire someone. So I went like kind of all in on product photography, and that's kind of like the niche I was exploring. And this is kind of around the time we first met from Doppio because I went in there and it was right when they were opening and asked if I could like hang prints up for print sales. And that was great. They wanted to decorate the shop. I provided them prints. Good deal there. Um, but they also had a lot of like food items and like coffee items, menu items. So I kind of asked them if they wanted like photography for their website to do like to go orders and stuff like that. And they agreed, and they were like my first like client. I think we charged them like $10 a photo, something like dirt cheap back
Yeah.
then. But I got my foot in the door with that client, and from there I kind of like started building my portfolio. Um, and started reaching out to brands like online, like e-commerce shops, that kind of stuff, and kind of developed like a system on how to go about that, how to actually find these brands, pitch them, and close a deal. So this was like a 8 month process of me trying to learn this thing, taking some online courses to kind of help me along the way. I worked with a coach, I think Zach Dula, you might know
Oh
him.
yeah.
Yeah.
Those guys are the best.
Yeah, Zach and John. So I took like their training for this stuff, applied a lot of their teachings to it, and then in July was like when I landed my first like legit client, using like those methods, and I just quit my job right there and went like all in on
You see
my
that
passion.
one turn and you're just like, this is it. I know I can do it.
Hmm.
Almost like a reaffirming moment of like, okay, this is real, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like so many people wait for that too.
Hmm.
In myself included, when I first went freelance, like I quit my job, didn't have a full plan, but I knew like I could do something with photo video. And then I landed, and granted, it was like back home and everything like that, but I saw like a check, and I was like, oh God, like I could actually do this. And
Yeah.
it's a really surreal moment, right?
Yeah, because it like validates everything you've been doing up until that point. Like the things you've been doing, you actually people are paying you for it now. So there's like proof that this will continue to work later on too.
Exactly. And I think it really just it shows not only you, but some people like my parents are really supportive, but I know that like it's a non-traditional route, right? Where
Hmm.
you're going freelance when you're young. Luckily, I was still under 26, so I was still on my parents'
Yeah.
insurance. So that was one thing I didn't have to worry about, but it's scary because I did the same thing, went to college 4 years, got a marketing degree, went directly into like an internal marketing role, and I was there for 2 years,
Hmm.
and during COVID, everyone just kind of like, I don't know if everyone was just going through it and they just decided like, all right, this is it. And that's, I found you and I found Alex. He used to be here in Chicago,
Hmm.
with Shy Shooters and everything.
Oh
And
yeah,
now
yeah,
he's out in LA doing his thing,
yeah,
crushing. But you two were like some of the first like coaches, I would say. And then JB, with, indoor drone, like those
yeah,
guys.
yeah, yeah.
JB's now, they're really good. And
Hmm.
eventually want to get him on this too.
Yeah.
But busy guy,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, dude, I think you've got a really interesting story, mainly because you come from like something that's not necessarily super creative, right?
Hmm.
You come from the chemistry background and then you pick it up as a hobby and you're like, this is really cool. I really enjoy this. And you get good at it, right?
Yeah.
And then you get good enough to sustain yourself, but then you're like, all right, how do I make this even better? Like it's learning something new and then getting good at it and then learning something next
Hmm.
and getting good at that and continuing to do it until you circle back, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people, especially early on, they just need to get good at one thing, right? And I think one thing that a lot of people, it's similar to kind of tying into this conversation of seeing that first check, is a lot of people deal with a lot of self-doubt, especially when they're going freelance, right? Because you're trying to pitch a business and that's when you do those really cheap opportunities, or you throw out a really small rate and you're just not believing in your work, right? So like,
Hmm.
did you ever deal with that early on when you were at least first starting out? And then how did you kind of not only get yourself out of that, but like build up that self confidence, not only in yourself but in your work?
Yeah, but that's a big process of just like dealing with like imposter syndrome and stuff like that. And that's tough. Like a lot of people go through that, and that's normal to go through that. I think that's fine. Um, the ways to deal with it, at least for me, early on, really I was really scared to pitch like the bigger brands, like the brands that had were like really established, just because I didn't think my work was good enough for them yet. So I kind of stuck to the small brands. Just I think it was like a limiting belief I had that I can only like work with these smaller brands because I haven't been in the game long enough to work with these big brands. Um, and like looking back now, like I wish I would have started pitching bigger brands earlier because my work was at that level. It was just like a limiting belief I had myself. So it's something you learn through yourself, or like if you're working with some sort of like coach or something like that, like they'll be able to tell you like objectively, like from the outside looking in, that's going to help to someone who's like been there and like knows that like, hey, if you're at like this level of work, you can still like work with these brands. These days, like I just look back at what I've done already. So like what clients I've had in the past, I've seen these clients have seen great results from my work. So it makes it easy for me to be able to pitch new clients because you kind of gain conviction in what you do. I think that's a big thing that a lot of creatives don't have. Like they don't believe in themselves. And the only way to, at least for me, was to just do more work and just kind of pretend that I have what it takes to work with all these brands and still reach out despite being scared of it. And just putting in those reps and then continuously delivering really good results to people just starts building up all this evidence that you can like look back on and see like, hey, I helped all these brands. I'm going to be able to help this brand with my photography as well. And this stuff, like, it doesn't really ever go away, like the imposter syndrome, because like I'm sure we'll get into this, but after I've been doing the photography for a while, I started like a YouTube channel, and like on the internet, anyone can comment whatever. So you always get like some haters commenting stuff, and do you let that get to you? That's like another thing that you need like more evidence for. So like for me, I actually have like a note on my phone that's like all the nice comments I get, or like people that are saying, hey, because of this video, I was able to land a client, or because of like your stuff, I've been able to like quit my job. So like looking back at like those success stories means like what I'm putting out there is good and people are getting good results from it. So you shouldn't really look at the people that are like negative towards that.
So you're more looking at the positive reinforcement from, those people
Hmm.
commenting on your stuff, or like within your course and everything like that. On how I think that's like so big, right? Because speaking of YouTube, like if you look at like the like percentage or whatever, it'll say like 96 point whatever
Yeah.
or like thumbs up. And then there's, the 3 point whatever left or like down. You're like looking at the three and you're like,
Hmm.
why is this here? But you're not looking at the 96, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's actually like huge. And I definitely see that a lot. And yeah, I think like kind of going into more on the YouTube side and like what your social media has kind of played a role in that, right? So you've got a pretty solid following, and I feel like your community is so strong for the size of like you are swinging well above your numbers, right?
Hmm.
But then your YouTube's booming, so it's like looking at that. Um, how how did you really get going in that? Because that's almost like the hard part sometimes can be how do you distinguish the work from for a client and for your personal brand, right? So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how do you kind of distinguish that, and like how have you used your ability to build a social network or like a community on your socials?
Yeah, so when I was starting my YouTube channel, this was 2021. It was about a year into doing like photography full time. And at that point, I kind of wanted like a side hobby almost because when I was trying to make my photography business work, I was doing that like outside of my 9 to 5. Now, starting this YouTube channel, I had this like core photography business. So, like outside of that, I would just put in time into YouTube and start posting videos on there. So, the intention was kind of to like, I've always liked the idea of YouTube, like through high school and like college. I think it'd be like a cool thing to do. And then I was also consuming a lot of YouTube to learn photography itself. But I didn't really see anyone talking about like how to get clients, like the practical stuff like that, and like how to start your business. So I started going down that route on YouTube because I thought that'd be something that people would find valuable, like a way to give back to like the community that gave me so much. So in 2021, started the channel and started posting a video like every single week, no matter what. So with the goal of just like, well, the first year's goal was to like get monetized. So that was, I think, like 1,000 subs plus 4,000 watch hours.
Man, I'm lucky they brought it down.
Oh
It's like
yeah,
503,000 now.
wow,
That's what we're
yeah,
gunning
that's
for
great.
this year.
Yeah,
So
the watch hours is brutal, but like that was my goal, like the big goal. But the actions that I actually took was what mattered. Like the goal, it's great to have that, but what really matters is like showing up consistently. And what like the big YouTubers were saying back then was like post once a week for a year. Don't look at any stats. Just try and get like a bit better every single video. And I really took that to heart. So like the first 3 months, I think I posted like 3 videos a week, and then from there I
wow.
scaled back to a video every week for the next 3 years, and yeah, it's been
Man, yeah, talk about inputs. I think that's been a consensus thing that I've, in people who I've talked to, at least like what their goals are for this year. Not that they're not caring about the numbers, but they're looking at it rather like, okay, what reps am I putting in as opposed to, okay, these are the numbers I'm hitting. Because it's always
hmm
good to have like, okay, for me, like I want to hit 10K on 2 platforms and then 1,000 on YouTube. Those are my goals for the year, right?
yeah.
But it's more focusing on like how do I actually get there, right?
hmm
So me, it's same thing. Want to do whether it's a podcast or like a vlog of some sort, one a week, and
hmm
if I can hit that, I just know that it'll continue to grow, right? Because of the inputs.
yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, and that's how I like look at goals for everything, whether that's like fitness or business or like my education company. It's all like input focused, and the outcome is almost like divorced from like the inputs. It's really just solely focused on like the work that you can do and you're in control of. And the reason like I like setting goals that way is because each day and each week you can see like what progress you've actually made. Because if you have like a goal of like, okay, I want to get 10K YouTube subscribers this year, like that's a great goal, but you don't have any control over that. You have
Yeah,
complete control over how many videos you publish. And if you make your goal like 10K subscribers at the end of the year, you might feel bad because you don't hit that and you don't know why you didn't hit it. Versus like if you made the goal like publish 1 video a week, every week you can feel good about yourself because you hit your goal every single week, and then like at the end of the year you're going to hit that 10K regardless because you put in the work during the year.
definitely. Yeah, and so now I kind of we've talked about like kind of the community you built and everything, but I want to expand on it a little bit and talk about what you're currently doing, what your bandwidth looks like, or like what your workload essentially better term is on. Okay, so you've got your coaching program, you've got your online course, and then you've got your product photography business on top of that.
hmm
So let's kind of dive into how we look at creating a business and then ultimately scaling that, right? And part of that too is getting clients. So like
hmm
just some advice on how like things that you've kind of gone through in your creative journey and things that you would try and avoid or things that you would double down on almost.
Yeah, yeah. Let's start with I guess me growing the photography company because we kind of left my story off at like 2020 when
Yeah,
I was
let's
like
pick
mad
that back up.
dopey.
We
Yeah,
got
yeah.
about a year and a half left, right?
Yeah, so in between like that time, between like that and like me really going hard on YouTube, I was really I was really focused on cold outreach to get clients. So I was like tweaking this like systemized approach to get clients because I wanted like predictable revenue. I didn't want to like rely on referrals because like I would just constantly hear how freelancers rely on referrals, and that didn't really make sense to me because they're not in control of that. And like, how can you like just rely on like someone else coming to you for that? So I want to create like some sort of systemized approach. Like I'm a pretty analytical guy and I like to solve problems that way. So in terms of like we were talking about earlier, like focusing on the inputs, I was really focused on like sending X amount of messages per day to clients via like cold email or cold outreach on Instagram. And from there, I would book calls from those cold emails. And then from those calls, close deals, some proposals, all that good stuff. And it was just kind of like a rinse and repeat process that like I teach now to my students, and they get great results from it too. So I was really focused on that as like the core process, and from there I kind of like scaled it. So there were parts of it that I didn't like really like doing. So like finding email addresses is kind of like annoying for me, but it's like a really easy task to do. So that was like one of the first things I outsourced. So I hired someone to help me with that, like a virtual assistant. So she would now like find the emails and like draft really basic emails. I would review them and like send the final ones. So she was really focused on the things that ate at my time but didn't really make me money. What really mattered to me was like hopping on sales calls where I could actually talk to clients and actually doing the photography work. So that stuff was like um, it required like critical thinking, was hard to do, required creativity. So I was focused on those things, and like everything else in the business I kind of outsourced. So like the editing, any like repeatable tasks could be automated. So I built out systems around that. So we had a team of 4 people, including me. Um, Kind of running the company where I was doing all the camera work, all the client communication, but other members of the team were doing other tasks like the edits of the photos, the initial outreaches to clients, stuff like that that was easy to hand off. So that was kind of how I scaled the product photography business and how I like help other photographers and videographers grow their business now. Um, and I documented all of that on YouTube while I was doing it. So I was like growing the business and documenting it, which was great. And I was seeing a lot of creatives like coming into my Instagram DMs telling me, "Hey, I've been following this stuff on YouTube. After like a couple of years of it, I've been able to like quit my job and go full time on this." And that was awesome to hear. So like getting lots of comments like that made me realize that I can make something bigger than just like this photography business and YouTube channel. I can make like some sort of education platform to teach creatives like how to like pretty much live their dream lives by monetizing their passion, because I had like some system that other people wanted. So at the end of 2022, I really built that out into like a concrete program along with coaching and really like a really systemized approach to creative business that anyone can like implement, and launch that and got really great results. So all of 2023, I was really focused um, on scaling that company, and that's like a whole different beast that we can get
Oh,
into
sure.
too.
Yeah, man. I think the hard part too, right, is like people, like we kind of talked about earlier, is they almost set a glass ceiling for themselves and they're not able to break through it. And I
Mm,
think you were able to see beyond, what limitations you almost put on yourself early on. And you're like, okay, how do I get not past this point, but to like 3 points ahead of that, right?
hmm
So I think that's something that, a lot of people probably after this will go back and look deep into your YouTube and see like your process through that and see how they can apply it to themselves and their journey within, building their name and then their business. And then now you're talking 2023, you were building out this whole coaching program.
hmm
So let's dive into that and talk about like how, I don't know if your focus shifted, how you kind of balanced that, or if you started to hand off other things within your creative business and then you focus more on coaching. Kind of like, let's see where your not your priorities lie necessarily, but how you kind of divide your time and build both of them simultaneously, right?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. Up until like 2023, I was like I was saying yes to like almost every opportunity that came my way. So any clients that would come in, anyone that would ask for my time, or like anything that came my way, I would say yes to it just to like get all these experiences. In 2023, I realized I had to like start saying no to like almost everything. So I pretty much did a 180 and shifted my focus really to building out the education platform. Um, Kind of selfishly, like it was a lot. I felt a lot better getting like people like me results than clients results. So like it's cool that you could like shoot really great photos for a brand and they make a lot of money off your photos. But it's even cooler to see like someone like who was you like 2 years ago, like learning the things you learned and then like being able to like go all in on their thing. So that kind of like drove me a lot, just seeing these people getting really great results from this stuff. So I want to really focus on that and like build it into like the best training for like creative entrepreneurs out there. So 2023 was a lot of experimenting with that, like how can I best teach people? How can I best market this thing? How can I best like enroll students into the program? So it was a lot of that stuff, and a lot of the lessons I learned building the photography company translated really well into this like new business. So in terms of like balancing the photography business and the education company, I kind of scaled back a lot of my outreach in the photography business and really focused on the retainer clients I had and just really worked with the people I really enjoyed working with and like the smaller businesses, still like getting up there and the ones that were like super easy to work with. So that was my primary focus there. And like I mentioned earlier, I built out those systems in that business, had like a virtual assistant and editor. So it was pretty easy to just keep that running in the background while building the education company on top of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I always say, maybe not the biggest thing, but it's a something constant that I always say is, once you get up, you send the elevator back down.
Mm,
I just love that mentality that you didn't get to where you are just by yourself. You relied on learning from other people like the Dula boys,
hmm
or for me it was you and Alex and John, and looking at that, you now have to be that person for the people that were in your shoes, 2 years ago. And I think hearing from what you've said is the biggest thing is when people tell you they were able to pursue something that they loved, like that's got to be everything,
hmm
right? Like that makes all the late nights, all the long hours, everything worth it,
Oh
because
yeah.
you're like, I'm helping younger me, basically. And I think that's so powerful, at least for creatives, other businesses too. But I think like creatives, because you live and die by your work, you
hmm
take so much pride in it, and then you're helping someone do the same exact thing. Now, kind of, let's jump back into social media a little bit, right? So we want to talk hard, like the hard parts about standing out, and I think you've done a really good job of separating yourself in terms of the inputs that you put in, but it's also the education and the value you bring in your content. So looking at that, what do you think some big things are to help creatives who are looking to do something similar to you, or just looking to build a personal brand that will eventually lead into client work? What do you think some of the hard parts are of standing out, and how could someone approach it and be really good at making themselves stand out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can tell you what I did, which I don't know if it's the best advice on how to stand out, but it worked really well for me. And that was really just being very consistent at showing up. Because if you like go back to my first like YouTube videos, like still have everything up there, they were just terrible. Like I didn't know how to act in front of a camera, just awful. But I like showed up very consistently and tried to like improve a little bit each video. So I didn't really go out with like the goal of like, okay, I'm gonna start this YouTube channel so I could make this online coaching business. Like I never had that goal. It just kind of happened as like a byproduct. My goal was just to like share what I loved at that time, which was photography. So that was what I was making videos about. It was what I was like truly passionate about. So having like your own personality in your content, I think is really important. Showing like who you are and how that relates to whatever your niche you're in. Definitely like niche down somewhat. You can't be like a generalist. So like my channel started as like photography tips and then it turned into photography business tips and then it kind of broadened into like all creative business tips. Um, but having like some idea of like what kinds of people you want to help is like a good way to start. So figure out who you want to help. Maybe that's going to be you 2 years ago. That's like a great starting point. Create content around that and incorporate like parts of your personality into the content. So if you love like cold brew or ghost, like incorporate that into your content. Ways to like sprinkle in parts of like who you are, be authentic, and just show up very, very consistently. And that last part I think is like the most important. Just like keep showing up and posting consistently, whether that means like once a week, once every day, whatever schedule you can maintain, like try and stick to that because it'll help you one get more content out and also improve like each and every video.
Yeah, I think one of our friends who I think you were actually on his podcast is Joey.
Mm.
He has been like poster child of consistency. I feel like I
Yeah.
see his stuff all the time, and dude, it's just like one after another, and it's very much just. I think you said it, Johnny said it. I've talked with a lot of our smaller creative group. Is showing up is more than half the battle. I feel like,
It's everything. Like
yeah,
whenever, like when I started my channel, everyone just said like show up consistently and that's it. That's all you focus on. And if like the people that have millions of subscribers say that, then like it must be true. So
yeah, they got there
I don't
somehow,
know.
right?
Yeah, like it's just it's a really really boring formula, which is frustrating for anyone starting out because it's so simple and you don't think it should be that simple, but it's really like the basics done consistently really well over and over again. That's what gets results. It's not like trying to do anything fancy or hopping on trends. It's just like focusing on the basics over and over and over again and not getting bored with it.
So you've kind of touched on this without fully touching on it, but how has your original vision changed? I know when you were starting, right, you just talked about this, was you wanted to, share photography tips. And how is that vision, or even when you started, you're in Japan, you're taking pictures,
Hmm.
how has the dream or the vision changed since that beginning time? And how has that original dream kind of carried throughout? But you can always have these little deviations almost like kind of as
Hmm.
you grow. And how has that just continued to evolve from, that little seed that was planted when you were still working that 9 to 5, right?
Yeah, yeah. Great question. I think it's really important to have some sort of clear like vision of where you want to be. You don't have to like know 100% where you want to go. It just has to be like in the forward direction, and it has to be like a little big, a little scary, something you reach for. It can't when you like tell someone like their reaction should be like, "Whoa, that's kind of crazy." So you want that kind of like sort of vision for yourself. And for me, like the first one I really remember was I want to just replace my 9 to 5 income with like freelance income. I want to like have my camera be able to provide just like a nice income for me to like live my life off of. And that was like the only vision. I thought like once I get to that point, I'll be happy. But like the goalpost is always moving. And I think the longer you're pursuing things, the more like people you'll meet and see like what's really possible out there. Because I think that's what's really changed the game for me, like meeting people who are further ahead of me, but also like I can see myself in their position. So I wouldn't like compare yourself to like someone that's like 10 years or 15 years ahead of you. Maybe someone who's like 2 years ahead of you, where you see yourself getting to that point. It'll be a stretch to get there, but you still can see that. So surrounding yourself with like people ahead of you is a really important thing. And like I've done that either through like meetups in Chicago. Like right now, I'm in a coaching group, and like I work with like this business coach, and there's people in this group that are really far behind me, and I don't really think of like, oh, that's I'm never going to get there. It's like, okay, I'll get there eventually. They've been doing this longer than me, but if I do the same thing, I'll eventually get there too. So, like as your vision grows, you're going to be like slowly hitting off these like milestones. You're going to be like, okay, maybe 10,000 YouTube subscribers is my milestone. Okay, great. Now I want 100K. So you're constantly like moving the goalpost, and that can be a tricky thing to do because sometimes you never really like if you keep moving the goalpost with your goals, you won't truly be happy like just going after these goals. So you have to find like fulfillment in like the inputs that you do, which brings us back to what we were talking about earlier about really focusing on the actions and like kind of having them be divorced of like whatever the vision is, but at the same time like focusing on that vision and knowing that the things you do today are things that will get you there eventually.
Yeah, definitely. I think the consistent thing that we've talked about is inputs, right? And I think that is sometimes the easiest thing to get overlooked
Hmm.
because in today's society of virality, you're, always one video away, but if you're always just chasing that one video, you're going to like it could be the 100th video that you post, but the reason people are going to stick around are the 99 other ones, right?
Yeah.
That you post before it because it shows that you're going to be there rather than someone going viral on their third video. Why would they follow you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that lends itself to building not only your community, right, it also goes into building you as a better, more well-rounded creative. And that ultimately is going to be lending itself back to when you were talking about client work. So you're talking, you have your initial clients and you're
Mm-hmm.
building these and you're still a little timid of reaching out to bigger clients, but then you keep building and building and building. And eventually all those inputs, you're like, fuck, I can do this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
easy, dude. This is like, why was I holding myself back for so long? I think getting in your own way is sometimes the worst things that
Yeah.
creatives do. So it is tough. And it is, I think, a portion of this podcast and why I really want to do it is to break down this social media wall that makes it seem like everyone is so much further in turn. Like it breaks down the wall of making people think that they're not like people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so easy to look at a screen. Or like when I work with musicians and I meet them for the first time, I'm like, you're a normal person. And it was like
Yeah.
the biggest eye opening thing is when I was just getting into concert photography and I met like two friends and I was like, I love you
Oh
guys.
yeah.
And they're just like, what's up, dude? How's it going? How's your day? And it was like such a big thing. And I think like it's so similar to now my work with ghosts. I get to meet all these influencers and work with them and people that inspire a lot of people. And they're seen as so high up there. And I'm not saying, it's not earned, like anything like that. It's people will put them up there and then think like they're so much higher than just a normal, they're just normal people. And they, for the most part, they want to be treated as such.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, it's just that's a big thing for me in this podcast is really breaking it down, and I think you do such a good job of that, and probably working with your clients and people who are taking your course and everything like that is breaking down that wall and showing that this is possible, even if I might be 3 years ahead of you, but I was in your shoes 3 years ago. So that's
Mm-hmm.
that's the big thing, right?
Yeah. That's I really like that point there because like yeah, everyone is just a normal person behind the screen, like for the most part. I think where one thing that I've noticed, like hanging out with some people that like are like really well established or like really high performers, is like if you spend like an hour with them, like they just seem like a normal person. But if you spend like multiple days with them, like you see what their like daily habits are like, and you can see why they're like at a certain level because um, like people that are really like high performers, they like have very strict like daily habits that they do every single day or like every single week that gets them to that level. And it's both like things they do and things like they don't do. So again, like they're focusing on like the inputs, the thing that they can control like every single day there.
Yeah, because an input necessarily isn't always creating something, right? It's doing little things that build
Mm-hmm.
into something bigger. And I always bring up Johnny just because he's someone to be studied for his boom on social media and how it's exploded into all these other opportunities, right? Is he would turn down so much stuff like hanging out with us. He's like, oh man,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna go golf this weekend or something. He's like, man, I got 3 videos I'm gonna put out or something like
Yeah.
that. And that all that those inputs just built into now he's got these opportunities with brands. He's getting flown out for these events, like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. But it's also, it could lead into a business or it could lead into a healthier lifestyle. Like if you're
Yeah.
going to the gym 5 days a week, you're going to get in shape, right? It's not because you do the sweat every day. I
Yeah.
noticed that too. And I'm like, man, I need to get my lazy ass up and do something today. So I think it's just applicable to everything you do in life.
Yeah.
And you might be able to set this goal and it's great to look at, but the goal of doing the inputs is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, just something that inadvertently became a huge part of this conversation. It's great because that's something I'm really focusing on this year. So I
Yeah.
think you'll see it pull through in a lot of people's content. I think 2024 is going to be a huge year for creators in general. All the creators I
Mm-hmm.
talk to are just gearing up for just a gigantic year.
Yeah, I'm super pumped about it too. Like, I mean, I've just been doing it for so long. Everything feels like it's really clicking this year. I know what to focus on, what not to focus on, like how to make content that's super engaging and then gets people results too. Because like you can make a great video, but if it doesn't like help people or like they don't remember it, then it's not going to matter. So I'm really focused on one like being super consistent and also like upping the quality of everything that we're doing.
Definitely. And I guess that kind of looks into where do you draw, your inspiration from? Because you have, it seems like a lot of things going on, right? But when you boil it down into just a few things, that's those big buckets. How do you, or who do you draw inspiration from that, helps you not only build the quality higher, but it's also like, oh, this is something really cool. How do I apply this to what I'm doing?
Yeah, good question. That's changed a lot for me over the past few years because I was following a lot of people on social media, like all different types of creatives, of like educators. Um, but the past like 6 months, I've really curated my feed and tried to like eliminate almost everyone out of it. Like I have like my main Instagram account, but I also have like a private account that follows like 10 or 15 people. And that's really everyone I let um, into my mind now. And the reason for that is I'm really selective with like who I draw inspiration from, and most of the people I'm following are like business people, not really creatives for the most part. There's some really cool creative accounts out there that I've discovered recently, which I am following. But like, where do I draw inspiration from for content? These days, it's really just like personal experience and what I've gone through. Because the whole reason I have like this coaching program, like the biggest like sales pitch for it is that if someone goes through it, they avoid all the mistakes I did. So that's like I made a lot of mistakes along the way. If I could have avoided them, I would have saved like 2 years of my life. So I just like look back on the past on how I was building my company and think through like all the mistakes I made and make content around that. Like how can I produce content that will help people like avoid what I did if I had like really bad cold email outreach attempts, like how can I help people improve that? If I had a bad sales call, how can I talk about that so someone else doesn't experience like the same pitfalls? Or like same with like YouTube, if I learned a lesson from there, you could talk about that. So that's where I draw a lot of like content inspiration from, and I'm trying to like make it more like I've been really good at like educating people. This year I'm trying to have more like entertaining content and like inspirational stuff, which has been cool. I've been doing more of like the inspirational stuff and people have been resonating with that. So again, it's like really looking back at my own story and seeing how can I share this like with the world with like a unique perspective.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to see where everyone draws different kinds of inspiration from because for Ghost, when we're looking at a campaign, for the most part, we're not looking anywhere in our own industry. It's always from
Hmm.
brands that we think do an amazing job of one, telling a story, two, they're making really cool shit, and three, they have some kind of backing that shows it's working.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing for the brand side, right? But
Hmm.
personal, it's now I'm looking at creators because that's what my current goal is to
Hmm.
do use this as a platform to help educate people who are in the same boat that we were in years ago. And, there are a few other things that personally I want to be able to grow this year. And I've gone to the point of I still do it is doom scrolling, and that's become such a big buzzword now.
Hmm.
But I've gotten better at as soon as I catch myself doing it, I'm just like, why am I scrolling right now? And I
Yeah.
literally just throw my phone. So I'm just,
Yeah.
I'll be sitting here and I'm like, I need to get up and create. And the Scott Simmons, who I had on my last episode, was um, creation over consumption. And so you might be able to look at a handful of creators and consume that. That's like your 10 to
Hmm.
15 that you follow. But now you got to go create it, right? And
Yeah.
you're looking at your past to help educate others. And that's your biggest inspiration or a big inspiration for you. And I think that once you get to certain levels, you have to do that.
Hmm.
And maybe I'm not at that level fully yet, but I can look back at, mistakes I've made that I'm like, okay, this is an easy one that I overlooked right away. Don't do this.
Yeah.
So,
And that's like a great way to also post content that's like super authentic because no one can really question it because you can say like, okay, this is how you build a successful business, and people will be like, no, I did this, I did this. But if you say this is how I built a successful business, like no one can really question that because it's your experience. So you're just like, if you just start everything with like how you did that thing, then it's not really anything, it's unique to you and it can't be like questioned because it's what you did. So I think rather than telling people how to do something, showing them like how you did it and being more like as like an inspiration figure rather than like this is how you should do it. I think that's really powerful in like building a brand these days too.
yeah, I think one of the quotes that I either read or listened to or whatever it was don't tell people how to do things, tell them what to do and let them surprise you with what they do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that was, and I might have butchered that quote, but I think that was something, and this is, I just started managing someone, and that's,
Hmm.
dude, that's a whole nother realm of
Yeah.
like past creativity, because you can be a really stellar creator and not a good manager, but you could also be a really good manager and not a stellar creator. So it's like
Yeah.
trying to find that balance. And I think a lot of people who have a hard time of letting go of certain things the more that they grow, and I'm sure you might have dealt with this too, is like when you first started your creative business, is you have everything done a certain way and you're probably very particular about it, because I
Hmm.
know a lot of creatives are. And as soon as I started to have to hand stuff off, I like wanted to be looking and making sure that everything was how exactly I would do it, but you're limiting the potential
Yeah.
essentially, right? So that's the big thing that I think a lot of people not misconstrue, but they get in their own way again, right?
Yeah, it's tough. Like managing people is a whole other thing. And I dealt with the same thing. Like when I first started working with the team, like I would be like, okay, these are the 10 steps you follow to get this result. And like they would have to like do it that way. But like last year, like when I started working with like my business coach, he was more like, hey, rather than tell people like what to do, just tell them what outcome you want and like let them get to it. And like I've been doing that with my team the past year and like they've just been crushing it. So it's been great to see.
Yeah, and there's always advice and tips that you can give. It's like this is where you want to get, and this is what you have to do. But to get there, here's advice. It's
Yeah.
not this is how you do it. It's I made these mistakes. Probably don't do that,
Yeah.
and it'll help you get there a little bit
Hmm.
quicker and a little less frustration on your end. So, as we've kind of talked about a lot of advice and a lot of not only how you're helping people who are in your shoes 3 years ago, but if you were going to give a few pieces of advice, I always call it the too long didn't read, the TLDR of the show. What would be these pieces of advice that you would give to your younger self, or to you give to your students, or to anyone who reaches out, that you're like, if I could leave you with a few things, what would that be?
Yeah, like what's worked for me over the years has always been like consistently showing up and doing the work, which is really boring advice, but it's been the most effective. So one, like figure out where you want to be in 12 months and then create like sort of like sprints over the next like year, whether it's like a month long sprint or like a 3 month sprint of like what you should be doing every day during that month to bring you closer to that goal. So again, like really focusing on what you can control, not really what you can't control. And from there, like the outcomes will just happen as a byproduct.
Nice. Yeah, I think we've hit on, oh my god, dude, I want to just clip it all up and just look at all these, because I think even people who are established are going to get a ton from this episode, just because you're always going to be learning, and if you're not learning, you're constant, or you're stuck essentially, like that,
Yeah, it's
right?
grow or die, right?
Yeah, that's the big thing. So, man, I appreciate you coming on today, and this is episode, oh man, wait. Yeah, this is episode number 6. We
Six.
are into 6. And you are starting, you are this, well, yeah, the second episode of the new year. And I think this is going to be one that's going to help a lot of people, not only as creatives grow, right, but also help them flourish. And they'll look into you, and, hopefully you get some new students out of this, is the help that you can provide to them and coach them and everything like that. And I think that's, a big wave of 2024. So if there's anything left in this episode that you want to leave any of the guests with, or if you think we covered it, by all means, like if you've got a few final words, and then we'll have you plug all your socials too.
I guess for like final words, there's like a lot of paths you can go down and a lot of things you can do. And the saying that's stuck with me like over the years is you can do anything you want, but you can't do everything you want. So pick whatever you want to do and like ruthlessly pursue that. Just be like really relentless with like how much you show up and how much effort you put into it. Because me like 5 years ago would never have imagined I'd be like in this position. Like it's crazy how much can happen really quickly if you just are focused like on what you want and actually pursue it like relentlessly. And with that, like you can do anything you want.
I love that. I've actually never heard that quote before. So, all right, to close it, where can the people find you? What are the socials? We'll plug it all in the description on the YouTube. But for those listening, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on everywhere. So if you look up Chris Pieta, Pieta, you'll find me. Instagram's where I'm most active. I'm one of those like weird Instagrammers that responds to everyone. So if you're listening to this, message me, connect, and I'll respond back. I'll know where you came from. But yeah,
Hell yeah, dude. All right, cheers to big 2024 and all that's here to come.
yeah, cheers, brother.
Appreciate you.